we are going to talk about how to bring in calmness in development workflows. So we're going to start with the 5-minute meditation. I'm just checking. And so, two topics we're going to cover here. And the first one is about developer experience and what this means, the friction that comes with it. And the next one is about cloud development environment. And it's often common how much time developers spend in troubleshooting local development environments, figuring out what versions or libraries to use, whether we use Java 7 or Java 6 or the wrong library. And we spend a lot of time on this. And I'm George, I work online at Gitpod, and this is Pauline.
Hi, I already introduced myself, but just in case you forgot, hi, I'm Pauline, and I head the community at Gitpod.
So yeah, we roughly spend a lot of time, 4 hours per week, just troubleshooting what to run and how to run the program we want to program. And it's often quite common to hear phrase like, "Oh, I don't know, it works in my machine." And how many of you times have you shared the program with a colleague and they're trying to run something and it's exactly the same source code, but the program is not running. And you usually start with a project, you usually check the dependencies, check out the branch one, use the readme instructions, so I need to install this library, and then run build, sometimes run tests, and then dive into coding. And yeah, this can feel a bit cumbersome sometimes. And this is where cloud development environments coming to the scene and being on demand and configured with all of these tools you need and the libraries, the versions required, and so it's ready to go.
The term CDE is, as George said, is cloud development environments. And at Gitpod, we coined 4 main principles. And the first one is on demand. So what this means is all our CDEs are instantly available and infinite. So you'll see this in the demo, but you can just click one single button and then we'll open up what we call a Gitpod workspace. And that workspace is essentially your development environment, but it runs in the cloud. So when you have that power in the cloud, you can imagine you open so many of them. And like literally you can be super productive. You can open like 10 workspaces and do like different PRs in every single one of them, which we will see when we do a demo. And in every single workspace, you have multiple contexts as well. The second principle that we have is equitable, and this is lowering the barrier of like software development using CDEs. So I'll just share a quick story. We have a colleague in our team, his name is Avi. He's actually one of my direct reports. He works in the community team. And I'm sure, since you're all here, you've been part of communities before. I'm sure you're part of the Elastic community, right? Yes, awesome. So we actually hired Avi from the community because he was super proactive with helping out other community members with questions about Gitpod and how to get started on Gitpod, be successful on Gitpod. And so his story is he was actually learning how to code. He was learning how to code in Rust when his laptop died. And then he couldn't code anymore. So what he did was he still had a really old Android phone. And what he did was he connected that phone to a TV, and then connected that phone with a keyboard and an external mouse, and he was coding using Gitpod. Because and that's how he learns. That's how he learns how to code. Because as I said, your development environment now is in the cloud. As you can imagine, that can lower the barrier of entry for everyone to get involved in tech. How cool is that, right? Cool. The third principle with CDEs is consistent. So who here has heard of infrastructure as code? Hands up. Actually, in the presentation, like we're recording this, so no one can see the hands up, so maybe you can make a big noise. Like, how many of you have heard of infrastructure as code? Woo! Amazing. So you can think of, Terraform is a very good example, where you have a YAML file and you specify these are the things that you need in your infrastructure. So you want to spin up X amount of EC2 instances or the database or using an S3 bucket or whatever it is. So you can imagine that type of power with development environments. So how cool would it be just to say, I want this in my dev environment, and every single time it's just consistent. There's a term I'm sure you're all familiar with, which is treat your infrastructure as cattle, not pets. Does everyone know what that means? So instead of taking good care of your infrastructure and making all of these adjustments to it, you can just throw it away every single time. And finally, our final CDE principle is extensible, which essentially means with Gitpod, again, we will see this in the demo, but you can build on top of the CDE. So that means you can use it with MongoDB. You can also customize it to your needs. I know as developers, we are attached to our dev environments and we want it customized to our exact setup, but with Gitpod, you can make that work out with and finally, as George said, so what he highlighted with do all the dependencies, doing git checkout, branch, installing tools, and all of these tools that you need to build, you just literally with a cloud development environment, select your project, and then boom, you start coding. That's super productive, right? And yes, so passing to George.
So maybe you've heard this before. They say good design is obvious, but great design is visible. And in a similar way, when a tool disappears when you start using it, whether it's a pencil or something similar, this is what cloud development environments aim to do. And so what can bring calmness into our development workflow, what things we can create, we can use. The first one is automation. And we'll talk about the demo each one of them. So this includes having your development environment version and having it source code, so everyone creates workflows with the same exact specification, the same libraries, version of databases, and whatever you need. The second is about ephemerality. So we used to be close to our development environments, try to maintain them, and with cloud development environments, we can actually create as many of them, and we don't need to care much about what happens to them. Sometimes they get deleted, we'll see this later in action. And it feels really good when you just close the browser tab or close the web browser locally, and you don't need to have this carry in your mind, like what happens to the development environment. Do I have to update it? Do I have my application and what happens there? Another example is prebuilds and how having your project rebuilt every time you commit, like in a similar way you have your CI/CD, like when you have your build and test phases go through its commit. In a similar way, cloud development environments can pre-build your code and have your project ready to go. So you don't have to wait every time you open code space to build again or download dependencies. Another aspect is security. So in these cloud environments are isolated, and you can also have access to SSH, and based on containers, what we have now.
As I said, with Gitpod, as you can imagine, I'm trying to think of a good example. So, for example, if you are a developer who has their code repository in Bitbucket, you can use Gitpod for that. If you have it in GitLab, you can use Gitpod for that. But also, in any file, issue, or PR, you can open a workspace, a cloud development environment in that specific context. So you can start to see that you can start to change your attitudes towards what it means to have a development environment. So you're not stuck in one specific one because you just throw them away depending on which task you need to use that development environment. With accessibility, as I shared with my colleague, opens up a lot of opportunities to learn how to code, and you can literally code from anywhere because one of our main IDEs actually lives in the browser, and that's VS Code in the browser. But we also support like your bigger IDEs, so JetBrains and VS Code. And also, funny story. One time there was an issue, and I couldn't wait to fix it, and I was actually driving. I was in a car, and I really wanted to fix it, and my laptop was there, and I just pulled out my phone, and I just opened up VS Code in the browser and made the changes on my phone because it's all in the cloud. How cool is that, right? And the second, and lastly, what creates calm is collaboration. So I'm sure you've all worked as engineers, like where you want to review a PR together, or you want to review something that you're working on, and you jump on a Google Meet, or it's super frustrating because then like sometimes there's lag, and you kind of want to pair program in a more hands-on way. With Gitpod, we have this ability to share a workspace and also share a snapshot, which we will show you as in our demo. And yes, I think it's over for the demo now.
Yeah, one last slide here is how easy to get started. It's like prefixing any Gitpod, GitLab, GitHub, or Bitbucket URL and all right. So we talked about automation and what this means for our development environment and infrastructure as code. Pauline talked about this. And with Gitpod, we have this Gitpod YAML file, which you can specify what tasks you can include in every time you open the workspace, on what ports to expose, and also what kind of extensions you may need for some browser editor specific ideas. So what you see here is the specification in a Gitpod YAML format, and this is about the automation part. And opening a workspace for this project will create an identical workspace for every person who tries to open this. And I can try this by either, if you go to the repository, this is a fork of a repository from the Gitpod samples organization. You can check it out. I added this here to also check the pre-builds because I needed to add this as a project. So you can either go in the URL, prefix this with Gitpod.io, or use, I think, if I reload. Yeah, there's also a Gitpod extension that adds a button in the UI there, which makes it easier. Sometimes you can also include it in the README file. It's easy, just prefixing the URL. And I will try this here, just gitpod.io /.io/hashtag. And when I click enter here, I'm already logged in Gitpod, and this will make a small nudge to select a different configuration like editor or a workspace class. And when you click continue, you will see the loading phase of the workspace, which will try to also consume a pre-build if there is one. And all right. So this is the workspace start sequence, which starts from checking out the repository, identifying if there is a configuration there, and whether it's pre-built and loading instantly. And what you see here is, if I go back to the repository, you will see here some that this is not the build process because this is already defined in the configuration here. So what's in the tasks here, like the ambient clean install, I know some of the crowd audience here is familiar with Java and Spring ecosystem. So what you see here is not the build process because this is already part of the pre-build phase. We will talk about it in a while. And so with one click, you get the whole environment, which includes downloading any dependencies. This means having in this case, all the dependencies that you may need to download with the MVNW, etc. This is using the default workspace full image. You can also define your custom Docker image and include anything else you may need. And this is about the automation part. And one other aspect we talked about is ephemerality. And this means that you no longer need to get attached to this. This is my workspace list, which it's the workspace I just opened. And I can open as many as I want without having to care about what to the previous one. And you can open a new one, close it, and you no longer have to worry about it. You can go back to the repository, just start fresh and create a new workspace. So this is about the ephemerality concept. I know it's a bit a new term for some, but you get used to it like after using it for a while. Like you no longer have to worry about it. Like also garbage collect some of these. So after a few days, all of these workspaces get deleted automatically. And the other concept is about the pre-builds I talked about. So if I'm here on the second workspace I open, and if I scroll a bit up, you will see here this small note which says we save 8 minutes on waiting for the project to build. This is usually when you check out the repository, you try to build your project. It takes 8 minutes to download all the dependencies from Maven, etc. And in this case, for every commit, this pre-built runs in the background. So when you open a workspace, you no longer have to wait for this. You just run the command you need, which is, in this case, Spring Boot run, if I can show this again here. This is the command, which automatically runs. And one other aspect we talked about is security. So what you see here is connected, is on the cloud, isolated from other workspaces, and you only have access to it. You can also share, we'll see later on. The context is about having the context of what you want to open, whether it's just the default context, the repository itself, or maybe a pull request we need to review, or an issue where we automatically create a branch for you. And we can see this in action here. I have 2 sample issues. I can go in that issue and create a new workspace for this specific context, which is the issue context. And we can create a new one. And what we'll see here is that once the workspace is ready, which is using the latest commit on the branch we want to create, you will see we will have automatically check out a branch created for us. So we no longer need to check out, create a new branch. If you see here on the bottom left, you see my username and the branch, which is created after the issue name. So you no longer need to be careful about the branch name. You can still change it, but it's a small automation that helps. And in a pull request view, we also have the Gitpod, GitHub extension for VS Code involved here, pre-built, embedded built-in. So when you open, you have the pull request view, and you can actually do the review inside the VS Code and just leave and close the workspace. And regarding accessibility, we talked about, you can see all this time I've been doing this in my browser. I won't have to install any editor. You can still use it locally with VS Code or JetBrains editors. But yeah, by default, this is more accessible in a way that it's all in the browser. And I'm going to show one last. I'll wait for this to start. And the last point is about collaboration and how when you are in a workspace, you can actually share a running workspace, and you can get this cell and copy and give it to a collaborator. Maybe you want to pair program while working remotely, and they will open a new workspace with the context, with exactly with access within this workspace. And similar, you can create a snapshot. If you want to also share it for later, this will create a snapshot of the current workspace with the exact same context you have, whether it's like files you edited, commits you haven't pushed, or changes you've made. And the other person will open, using this link, will create a workspace with the same context duplicated. And yeah, this is it more or less. And yeah, and it's the feeling that you can just close the tab here and you no longer have to worry. It's quite relaxing, I would say. So thanks, everyone.